Hey there. Today's job is going to be a little bit interesting. I'm making a pick guard for a Gibson Custom Shop AL 355. And the reason I'm making a pick guard for it is because Alex Lifeson actually signed this one for my customer, and so he wants to take it off the guitar, the signed one, and put it in a display case or something, and get another one made that he can put back on the thing. So, luckily, my customer sent me a scan of the existing pickguard. As you can see here, I printed out the scan, and he also included a ruler with the scan, very important, that way I get the scale exactly right. But even better, my customer is a skilled drafting engineer. And so he gave me a detailed blueprint with dimensions, angles, radii, everything on this pickguard. So that's going to be a great help. So let's get started. Here I've got a piece of nice tortoise pickguard plastic. And after I printed out this scan to life size, I cut it out just on the inside of the binding, so that I could take that cut out, and I glued it to the pickguard plastic material, and now we're going to bandsaw it out and shape it on an oscillating spindle sander. So here we have this shaped pickguard. I went over it by hand with a block just to smooth out any possible facets that were left by the spindle sander. And then on top of that, I scraped the sides down with my scraper so that it was a nice crisp square side. Alright, so now we're ready to apply the binding. And what we're going to use is this cement. This is called ambroid, and what it does is it actually melts the plastic so that when the binding layers go together, they all melt into each other and becomes one fused piece of plastic. Great stuff, but kind of tricky to work with. As you can see, I've pre-bent the outside piece of binding. This is the thick white plastic, and I've got the two inside black-white bindings here. We're going to apply glue. Okay, so here we have it. What I've done is I've put the binding in its layers all around the pickguard, and I've surrounded it with these large finishing nails. Left a little bit of a gap in between the finishing nail and the binding so that I could install these tiny maple wedges. And these wedges are what are keeping the binding tight to the edge of the pickguard. I find that the wedges work well, especially with the thicker binding that's hard to bend. It wants to spring out. I don't really trust tape that much because it's not quite strong enough to actually force it into the side. I don't want to end up with any gaps in between the lines here or anything when we pull this out and scrape it down flush. So now we will let this dry overnight and pull it out tomorrow morning, and we'll scrape it flush. As you can see, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but it's a little bit proud, maybe a 32nd of an inch or so. And so what I'm going to do is use this scraper to scrape the binding. And what I've got here is I put a piece of masking tape along half of the scraper because I'm going to run it along the plastic like this. I just want this edge to cut into the binding. I don't want this edge to cut into this needlessly, the plastic. So here we go. And so on until we do the whole thing. You can see that little spot there. It looks pretty good. Oh yeah, here's something I forgot to show you as well. I had to make up another log of binding for the bottom part of the pickguard. And this will get beveled into the point of the pickguard afterwards. So basically what I've done is I've just sandwiched it between a straight edge. I've got a straight edge clamp down here and another straight edge, which is basically an old fingerboard. Same method, some finishing nails and some maple wedges. Very simple clamping system. Alright, so I've scraped the binding down flush to the pickguard surface, and now what I have to do is bevel this piece of the binding right here to match this. This is the piece I laminated up before, and what they're going to do is bevel together into a nice mitered joint right there. So I'm going to take this sharp, freshly sharpened chisel. This is one of my E.A. Berg's, awesome chisel, and we're going to cut that miter in. A couple of nifty little tricks on how to get the right angle. If you take a look, if you have polished if you've sharpened your chisel properly, the blade itself should be pretty highly polished, and you can use that to your advantage because you can actually see the angle in the reflection. So what I'm trying to do is make this angle parallel to the actual line here. Right? See, if I go like that, then it's no longer parallel. I don't want to cut it at that angle. That looks about parallel to me. So that's the angle I'm going to be shooting for. So let me just start by trimming it a little at a time. And as we get closer, I'm going to have to be a little more careful. Make sure that I'm lining it up straight up and down, that kind of thing. Okay. Now we miter this piece to match that. Nice. Alright, now we'll stick that back into the gluing jig, and again, we'll glue it up and wait overnight, and then we'll cut the routes for the pickups.